Hi, I'm Matt Mulvaney, and this presentation is called Deconstructing the Apex Application Development Lifecycle Paper. So I work for Pretius. Pretius are a team of over 250 IT experts, including over 50 Apex developers, and we offer low code in other low code environments as well. And we can work on the entirety of your Apex development project. We can work on small parts of it. We can come in and assist with certain deliverables, so we can offer the entire outsourcing of our remote teams. And we act globally, which means all our customers are spread out across the world, and we're based in our office 5 minutes away from the airport in Warsaw, so very easy for us to come see you or you to come see us. Please check out our Apex plugins. We've got the award-winning Nested Reports plugin, and we have the Pretius Developer Tool, which gives you some bonus features for Apex developers. And check that out. And we also have the Translate Apex project, which gives you a head start in making your Apex applications multilingual. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so this is the front page of the Apex development lifecycle paper. You can see it came out in October 2022, and it is up to version 3. I've read all 3 versions, and this version is a complete rewrite. So you don't need to read version 2, just go straight for version 3, and it's up to date with the latest versions of Apex. If you want to download this paper, use the QR code on the left, or use the link on the right, or probably the easiest way is just Google for Apex lifecycle document, and you will find it, and you can download it. So the challenge is always been whenever you save in Apex in Page Designer, you're saving to the database in metadata. So we need to adapt that metadata-based development into like a file-based system. And when you work with files, you can put them in version control, for example, SVN or Git or other. So another challenge for Apex is we need to offer this feature-based development. So as a development team, work on various features. Some features will be ahead of others. When it comes to release, you need to separate which features you want to release into the next build. And the white paper also covers lots of these best practices throughout as well. So it also covers environment layout. It also covers page lock-in. So lots of different practices. And the solution to all this is the white paper. Now, in the presentation in the white paper, it discusses a lot of these scripts, lots of scripts to use throughout your development. You don't need to take pictures of it. You don't need to write any notes down. You just need to download this white paper and then page down all the way to the last page, and you will find a download link where you can download all those files. So the white paper was created by Steven Muench, who's a senior architect for Oracle. He's been there 33 years. It started with Oracle Forms there, you see, and Project Sedona, which became the ADF framework, worked on ADF, also worked on Visual Builder Cloud Service, which I'm pointing that out because there are a few references to the cloud service in this document. And then in October 2021, he's a senior architect for the Apex development team. And Steve is so intelligent, so clever that he's even had an algorithm named after him. So the Muenchian grouping, which is an algorithm for grouping of data using XSL transformations, version 1. Now, I've actually attempted to read through this document, but a lot of it goes over my head. It's way more intelligent than I am, so we're in good hands with this document. Okay, so the first intro and the first few pages introduction to the document talk about the goal. So our goal is to manage incoming requests for work, to make steady progress on our application by improving the app, by divvying out all the tasks to our team, and then being able to peer review, to test, and to release all those features to achieve some kind of regular cadence with our development. So that's the goal. So how do we accomplish that goal, and how do we go large to make it even better? So to accomplish that goal, well, to manage requests, we need to track all these changes coming in. We need to work on all these features and changes and tasks in parallel. We need to be aware of what we've done historically and manage the change history. We need to test the business logic, not only the application of the UI, but also the database level code as well. When we're ready, we need to make a build, and then we need to take that build and deploy it to other environments. And we need to do that in a consistent way, which does not create a lot of headache of additional work, and we can trust that that process as well. And we also want to aspire or to achieve environment separation. So we need to be able to work on dev and know we are safely on dev without conflicting in any other environments as well. Okay, and we can go large from that. So some bonus features we can do is we can inspect code. Now we can use tools to inspect that code for us and suggest things to us. We can work in isolation of all other features, knowing that whatever we do on our environment does not affect anyone else's features. And then we can automate some of those scripts that I told you about earlier to take that manual work off our hands. Yeah. So there's a general theme of this white paper, and it's also the theme of this presentation, where the white paper describes something step by step. So a manual, how to achieve something using a tool or a command, what parameters to use, and so you can run those by hand, or it will collect up all of those steps into a script. Now, scripts are provided for Mac, Linux, Windows in a collection of commands run in sequence. Those scripts can be automated, so put together and ran on a given event. Event could be a timed event, like 11 o'clock at night, or it could be whenever there's a git push, a git commit, we can run something there. Okay, so there's an interesting point on metadata as well. So the point of this is developers create a definition once, and that's stored in metadata into the database. So whenever I created a chart in Apex 4, this is what the charts look like. This was the flash chart, so it was even better than the default charts that are available at the moment. Now in Apex 22.2, we've got these jet charts, these curvy lines, these multi-charts, all in one combination charts. So you've created that definition once, and then when you upgrade Apex, you get better UI, you get better animation. You may even get performance enhancements as well. When you update the database will give you better performance as well. All this requires no work on your part to benefit from this improvement. That's what the white paper says. Perhaps some of the time you need to make some minor adjustments to make it into the latest, but the definition you would probably store once. By the definition, I mean the SQL statement. I mean the column mappings to the X and Y axis and the totals and the legends. All that would just be done once. To achieve this environment separation, it talks about these environments. So production will be the current version of the application. The current build you've got, that will be deployed in production. Testing would be a future build, like the next release. It could be weekly, daily, manually. It's the next set of development, and development will be undergoing active development. To get from environment to environment, you are releasing your builds. A build is a collection of scripts called artifacts, and therefore you're releasing the artifacts. And this is just saying there's a different set of people using each environment. Developers on development, testers want a stable environment. They want to go to work every day and be able to perform their testing on their test environment on a stable environment. And users obviously on the production. Okay. Remember that metadata in your development environment is only the current state of the database, current state of the application. So whenever I change something, like I change a label, I look at the metadata, and it's the current state, the new label. So to preserve a history, you need a conscious effort on your part to record all this historical information. And how you do that is using files. So it's like a point-in-time snapshot by exporting the files. So I could export my Apex application to you, and you could import it into your workspace. When you try to run it, you won't get very far because you don't have the database components. Therefore, your files or your artifacts are two parts: your Apex application plus your database scripts. Your Apex export can be split. So it's great for version control. It splits into each component per script. And you can also have a readable version called a YAML, which is just used for difference and scans. You can use a separate parameter from the command line, I believe, only, where you can export all the embedded code. So you can export SQL and JavaScript, and then you can run different tools on top of that to give you some stats on that. So all files are these application artifacts. This diagram explains that the database comes out as separate files, the application comes out as separate files, including these YAMLs. So artifacts, bear this in mind, we'll return to that later. Okay, remember our goals, remember our how we achieve those goals. Well, we need a task tracking system, and Steve talks about the wish list for this. So everything in one place, not cutting in different systems. Whenever a bug is logged, we want some recreation steps, and we want the tool to assist us in those recreation steps. We need to be, for new features, we need to provide goals, we need to provide steps, use cases, support attachments like screenshots. Once it's in the system, we need to put it into sprints maybe, we need to put a status on that, who's assigned it, to classify it in a different way. All those tasks we need to bundle up in some kind of milestone. Yeah, it could be a sprint, or it could be a release we're working to, depends on the tool. If we could use the system as well to log ideas, I've been saying for years, there's no shortage of good ideas. Just look at the Apex Ideas app. There are dozens and dozens of ideas that people have, no shortage of good ideas. And some way of providing like a board, a visualization, a chart of all this, that would be awesome as well. So here's some tools you can use. Here's team development. You get this for free. It's built into Apex, and it's a unique feature where you can log issues and associate them with a page, and then you can go to page design and see there's an issue associated with that page, and you can fix it while you're there. So here looks like we've got some historical information. We've got 2 greens, which are 2 total. This says users confused and no rows returned. This one says they'd quite like customer gallery photos. Okay, so when you click on one of those, this is the no rows returned. It says users do not know what a row is. Please speak their language. Say no claims for you to review. Okay, that makes sense. And here's a screenshot where it's explaining what they need. Here's a visualization. Here's a Kanban board. So a Kanban board is like, we call them swim lanes. There's to do, in progress, completed. This would be a very basic one. You can add more swim lanes. You can say in progress, and then move it to code review, and then code review can move it back or to be released, and then when it's released, it can go completed. So it's up to you. You can have as many swim lanes as you want, and then you can drag and drop. You can right click assign it. You can change the status from the board. It's another board. This is Jira, and this is GitHub issues. So there's lots of tools out there that enable you to manage your incoming tasks. This is adding a new field onto there. The white paper talks about multi-user development, and yes, I use multi-user. I quite like it. So you can work, multiple developers can work on the same app. They can work on different pages at the same time, and they can work on the same page at the same time. It's kind of good for bigger pages when it changes are kind of minor. But this is a small page here, and you can see someone's changed the label, and then this user's changed the label, and then another user's changed the label and saved it before this one can save. So they've got this red message all over the place. What they can do now is open up another tab and then copy bits and change items from this tab to the new tab, and then save it. That would work. If you want to avoid this altogether, there's that icon here, which is like an unlock icon. So you can lock the page. When you lock the page, everybody who visits this page appears in read only. So you can look at it, read only, and then you can click the link and you can see what the lock was. If this person who locked the page goes on a holiday or is on sick leave, workspace administrator can unlock the page, and then we can continue working on that page. You can also see the locks. Pages are locked from this view. This is the app builder link. We click the app builder, we can see home page is locked. Okay, there's a section on approaches for modularizing your apps. So here we've got a workspace associated with the database schema. So one workspace here, one application associated with this schema. So it looks like the workspace administrator has assigned multiple schemas to this workspace, and then the apps just use one schema at a time. Or large solutions can be a group of mini apps. Okay, so we've got a conference workspace, and we've got 4 apps in here. We've got a session speakers app, we've got a sponsors app, we've got attendees app, and then we've got this library app. So library apps are really good because they allow you to subscribe elements to it, such as lists, such as templates, themes, authentication schemes, authorization schemes, list of values. So you may have a list of values here called presentation type. So it might be beginner, advanced, developer, but you might want to add deep dive. So if I add deep dive in there and then publish it, all the subscribing applications all pick it up rather than me manually going into each one. And you can see here that all this workspace uses one schema, and this schema is shared between different apps. So out of the two, this one is the one that I much prefer and I would tend to use. So here's subscribing and share. Look, I'm creating a list of values. I'm copying it from my other application, which should be my library application, and then I can say copy and subscribe. So I take a local copy of them, I can change them, but they're subscribed. So I can always reset them from the parent app or publish changes down into subscribing applications. For authentication across MIDI apps, so let's go back a few slides. So if I was in the attendees app and I wanted to go in the sponsors app, I should be able to click it without having to log out and log back in again. Yeah. So to do that, I use session sharing of workspace sharing. So all apps in my workspace are all shared together. There's lots of different ones here. You can use a cookie, so only certain apps can use that cookie. You can use application groups, so just certain applications can share their session. So there's lots of features you can use there. Okay, I said we'd return to artifacts, and here we are. So I really wanted a simple Git diagram. This is about as simple as I get. So the white paper suggests you use version control. Not only that, it suggests, it's more than a suggestion, it basically tells you to use Git, yeah? So you have this master, which is a remote, which you would need a server. For GitLab, GitHub, there are VS Code Studio, there's OCI DevOps, there's many more. So you have a master, and then you take a branch, you clone it into your work, and then you push it back. Meanwhile, someone else at a later stage has cloned the repository and pushing it back here. When it pushes it back here, it needs to incorporate the work from here as well. And so it all gets merged together into one commit. Yeah, nice and easy. So let's explore this. So the white paper suggests you export Apex through a command line, and the command line is better because it can be automated in Jenkins or CI/CD. So here is a tool called SQLCL. If you want to use this, go to oracle.com/SQLCL, download the latest version for all operating systems. If you just type Apex and hit enter, you'll see all the Apex commands. However, it's got this Apex export and then application ID and then split. So split hammers it into different files per component. We have different parameters like skip export date. So whenever you export, it puts the date of export in, which is not good when you're comparing files in Git because it thinks it's changed, even though nothing's changed. You've just exported it several times. So you can skip export date. If you want to maintain consistency of your application component IDs across different environments, use the original IDs. Export supporting objects. Occasionally I will use this. And then you can export types. So obviously you want to export the source, but you can also have readable YAML, all this embedded code, so in different folders, embedded code. The white paper gives you the exact code to run here, Apex export, application ID, with all those things there. When it comes to the database, we're also going to use SQLCL. This is an Oracle database. We're going to use SQLCL, A part of SQL is a tool called Liquibase. So Liquibase is a very powerful tool to maintain releases, to facilitate releases, make it easier. So there's a standalone, there's a pro, but the Oracle SQL CL team have taken it and customized it, made it part of SQL CL. So when you export the database, it exports in these XMLs, right? Do you ever need to look at the XMLs? No, you don't. You don't even have to look at them. You don't have to open the even folder. You don't have to click on them. You never work from them. They're just for releasing. You can just leave them all alone, but just for release. So how this works in SQL CL, this is SQL CL by the way, I'm going to export my database. It runs some DDL options and then it uses this generate schema split and then it looks at all the database. So have you got any type specs and bodies? Have you got any sequences, directories, clusters, tables? What about package specs? So it processes them all and outputs files. Now I have a table. When it looked at table, and I created this table called SQL CL Liquibase test. And this doesn't look like a table script. This is not SQL. This is not create table. This is just an XML representation of it. So I've got my table name, I've got my columns, I've got varchar 2 for my call, I've got some physical properties of it, but that's what it looks like. Do I need to open this file and have a look at it and change it? No, I don't. What if I change the data types of it? No. Just leave it alone, just go and change it on the database, and then we'll run it again and we'll get a new representation of it. So now what? So now it looks like this. I've got my installation and my application. So those are the two that outputted when I exported my application. I've then got database, which is what Liquibase created. I've got readable, which I don't need that in a build. I've got workspace, which I had to manually change the script to do that. So in the future release of scripts, I'd like that to happen. We're going to run one of the files called git to build, and we've got a zip file, and it puts the date on it. And then I'm going to move that to the builds. And then in Git, you can tag them, say this specifically is release 29. What can you do with builds? Well, I've got the zip. What can I do? I can deploy them. If I'm on cloud, I can put this set cloud config to buy a wallet. And it runs two things. When you deploy it, you use apex install build, what the zip file is, what the app and workspace is, and the connection string. So the first thing it does is sets up, well, it wants to run the install, but it does some pre-setup. It says, well, this is application ID. Yes, install the supporting objects, generate an offset, which is required for command line. This is actually the schema, and this is actually the alias. So go ahead and install it. Next step, it's going to do an LB update, Liquibase update. In our database folder, we have a controller file, which tells us what all the other files are. So go in the controller and go and process, perform a database release basically. So in a little more detail, it creates this temporary folder, extracts the zip file, does the prep, does the installation, and then does the LB update and applies that database schema object definition changes. So let's go back a slide. So what this really does when you call this LB update, it says, let's go back to actually, I want my database, my target database to have this table, and I want it to have these columns. If it doesn't have the table, it will create the table. If it does have the table, but maybe some things are wrong, it will do an alter table and modify the columns. So the syntax is looked after. This is just the state of the database that I want. I want this table, so go and create it. Okay, there's a couple of environment setups, which depends where you should deploy. Here we have our dev, test, and prod all in the same database as different schemas. Each schema has its own workspace, dev, test, prod. And in this environment, it's much easier. So we've got separate databases in separate environments, dev, test, and prod. All the schemas are the same. All the workspace is the same. Complete isolation. But the script to install it is the same, but you just change some of the arguments. So on test, my app ID is 1500. On dev, it's 500, and on prod, it's 2500. So I changed the workspace name and I changed the schema name, whereas on this, I just changed the host name to connect to a different database. Yeah, so the scripts work the same. So let's put this all together. So a day in life of an Apex developer. They work in their Git repository. In their source folder, they have a folder for SQL files for working on a package. So on the database, I can make any amount of DDL work, which I don't need to script. So alarm bells, this is kind of unusual. By this, I mean, I can create a table, I can drop a table, I can create an index, I can rename indexes. So I can do a type on the database. Yeah, I can do various things. Provided it does not contain SQL, I can do it on the database, but I would like my field SQL to be in my Git repository. So in my Git repository, you could use your favorite editors to compile the source file. So I'm going to develop and compile with VS Code. That's my favorite editor. We've got the Oracle database extension, which I kind of like. I kind of like custom scripts, to be honest. But I work with the source in there. If you want to use SQL Developer or Peel SQL Developer, as long as you're working from your repository, that's awesome. And then in Apex, use Page Designer with attention to lock-in, build options, all the best practices I've talked about already. So does the developer need to be liquid base aware? No, not at all. Just needs to know that Peel SQL files are in source, and I can do what I like on the database. Yeah. Right, now we're going to use a script export to Git, which exports the schema, gen schema split. So it creates me my XMLs in my database folder as releasables. It's not the source. Remember, I don't need to open that. Then I'm going to use SQLCL export Apex to split and put it in my application folder and my YAML in my readable folder. So that's done in one script. Then, if I like, I can create a build, which is so simple. That script is so simple. It just zips it up, and it uses a zipping. Sorry about that. It uses a zipping utility from Java, because to get SQLCL on, you've got Java already, so it uses zipping library from there. Then we can use apex install build, which deploys, unzips. Remember, it unzips it, installs the database through LB update, installs the apex using that prep, and then the install file, and then puts it on your target environment. However, for me, this feels a bit uneasy. For years, I've always scripted DDL. I've created a table, and then I've saved a script for alter table, and then I've done some data files. So liquid base is completely in control of your database versioning, for the better, actually. Developers do not need to be liquid base aware. They don't need to write any change sets. They don't have to do any notation in the files. They don't even have to have it installed, which is awesome. YAML is super easy to read to find out the differences. All these scripts can be added to Jenkins. But there are some cons. So the builds are constructed from development environment, from the database itself, the script of the database, and put into these zip files. For years, I've always built from source, never from files, never from the database, which is a little bit uneasy for me. It also means that the build folder may not contain the source folder. So if I just go on the database and just create a table, it's not in the source, but it's in the build. Yeah. Fill deployments require initial fixing and rebuilding. Okay. And scripts only support one app schema. Okay. So do you remember about those multiple apps, like the conference app, which was actually 4 applications? Well, these scripts from the white paper only do one app and one schema. So you need to modify the scripts if you want to make it a multi-app. So how this works in a database deployment in Liquibase, I'm going to just create a table in SQL Developer. So I've got a table, and then use GenSchema split, and then it gives me this, which we've seen already. This is my columns and my table. Then I'm going to use LV update, which creates the table on the target environment. Then I'm going to go back into development, change the data type of my call to varchar to number. You see, I've got a number now. My call is a number. And then I'm going to GenSchema, and then I'm going to update it. Yeah. So what it should do, this is you can say liquid base update SQL. So it tells you what it's going to do before it does it. So it looks like it's going to do some liquid base stuff and liquid base stuff after an update. But here we're getting the actual command alter table modify my call number. Looks fair enough to me. What it actually did though is error. Column to be modified must be empty to change data type. Okay. However, the developer should know about this, so should be able to fix it. You know, they should know about it because they did it on development environment. So it needs to be adjusted for this, like a pre and post release. So this section is about general improvements to the document that I'm suggesting to Steve. So Steve never talks about how you get data from environment to environment. Like I said earlier, there's multi-schema, multi-application missing. In the Windows versions, at least, it wipes out my source folder, so I need to prevent that. There's missing Cypress examples. I'll show you about that later. For the zip file to work and zip up to a build, it needs a workspace subfolder, but that's never exported, so I've had to manually change that to export it. When you use GenSchema split, there's a parameter called filter, so it can exclude any dev-only objects. So if I create a table called mat and build it, it'll appear on non-development environments. I don't really want that. But if I create it as xz_mat, I can use a filter to say any xz objects at all, whether it's a table or a package, whatever, don't put them anywhere, don't release them anywhere. So that can be handy for you. Deploy scripts just, yeah, in Windows at least, the deploy script or the install build, it just outputs it to the screen rather than run it. But if you run the steps one by one, it does work. And you must be on the minimum release of 22.4 of SQL CL to even run these scripts, which is odd because this release came out after the white paper. But if you run any earlier version, you will run into some issues in SQL CL. I've been on the forums, I've been logging these. So those been resolved now. So that's the minimum version you want to be on. So this is just an enhancement what I've done to what the white paper says. So this says you can use the xz prefix. Before we liquid base release, we can use a prescript. So maybe we can when we run into some troubles in changing the data type, maybe we can take a copy of that table and then we can know out the columns and then change and then do the release, and then after release we can put the columns back in and then we can drop that clone table. So that's a way of facilitating the data type change. So we're working around liquid base. A prescript, do the release, and then postscript. But postscript can also be used for DML, so here's some DML there that I want to use. There's also a data parameter as well, which you can say data in this table on dev must be the same as other environments. So you could possibly use that as well for lookup data. Yeah, so this can be adjusted to ignore certain objects. There's a small script fix I did here to incorporate the workspace folder, and this time it actually runs it rather than outputs it to screen. So there's some small improvements. So here's what my repository looks like. Okay, one cool thing is in the database, remember where we've got these XMLs, it splits them into these subfolders like index, package body, package spec. So how about in source, I use identical names. So package body, package spec, trigger, type spec, view. Remember, I've only got SQL in here. I don't have table in here because I don't need it. I just need to record PL SQL in there so I can work with it in there. So here's my top level folders. I've got application and then install. I've got my builds, which I put in there. I've got data, like that data flag I explained earlier. I've got my XMLs database. I've got the deploy, which is the pre and post. I've got readable, which is my application YAML. And I've got all my source all in there, including my workspace. So I find this is a very nice way of organizing my repo. Okay, so that's deployments for now. We'll come back to it on the Jenkins CI/CD. There is a section about testing. So like everything so far, there's a user interface and there's the backend database testing. This is testing with Cypress. This is a Cypress file. It's CY, but it's actually JS, so it's a JavaScript document. Now, all commands start with CI. So I've got CI visit, CI get, CI URL, CI get. So the idea of Cypress is meant to be very easily readable, English readable, but in fact, you do need to have some skills in JavaScript to get it working. So really, this is saying, visit this page. Now, we've got an ID, we've got 2 page items called username and password. Just get them and then type in username. Username comes from a Cypress environment variable, fair enough. So does password, but don't lock the password. Now we need to expect the username was set to be a string and not empty. If the password is not a string or is not present, then we can error. Otherwise, get the login button and then click it. Oh, this is different. Why aren't we using the static ID like we're doing here? Well, if you use data COI in these square brackets, it means an attributes of the element. So if you use an attribute of the element, you're not using a class, you're not using a static ID, because those things might change in your Apex application. So having a separation of this Apex logic and Cypress logic. So this is actually best practices to use an attribute like that in that way. So we're going to click login, and then we say, well, is the URL should be on the home page, yeah. And then we're going to get our worksheet, which should be a static ID. Have we got Adams and Blake in there? Okay, cool. So now in that search field, now we're going to type in Blake Manager King and press enter. And then the region should not contain Adams, right? Because we didn't search on it, but it should contain Blake because we searched for Blake in lowercase. So you can kind of build up and see how these work. You can run it from the command line and see it in action. You can do it headless, so you don't see it in action, or you can see it in action here, and you can see things clicking through and being tested. Right, for the back end, it suggests use util pl SQL. So in this example, we're going to test two functions in our person package. So here's person package. We've got validate date, not in future. Pass this in a parameter. And then we've got validate US phone number. Yeah. So we're building this test package here. So we're creating a package called ut_person package. We're saying it's a test suite, and here are our tests. The first test says, well, tomorrow is state +1. So we expect the result of that function to be false. Next one, validate the US phone number. We expect this phone number to be true. We expect this phone number to be false. We expect this to be null, this to be null. And when you run it, you can run it with this ut_run. You can do it without a parameter, or you can say HTML reporter or JUnit reporter. It does a scan for all these comments here and all packages. It runs the tests and it outputs them in HTML. So you can see our person package is 50% covered. We can click it and it says, well, I've tested that and that, but I've not tested validate integer. So you've got a code coverage as well. There are other tools you can use. So you can use Apex Advisor, which has been built in to Apex, and I've seen an idea on the Ideas app, and I think it's on the roadmap to improve that area. So that gives you performance, security, and quality tests in there. When we export the embedded code, we can have tools to look at the embedded code, and we can also use SQL_CL's set code scan on. Yeah, here it is, set code scan on, run a SQL query, and it says, whoa, you had a function call. Oh yes, the upper there. You can use it for PL SQL. It says, whoa, you've got a SQL injection vulnerability here. So it's useful. You can go to the documentation on SQL and you can see exactly what rules it runs when it runs code scan. There are not many, but I guess they are valuable. They are useful. Have a look at them if it's ideal for you. You can use different tools here. You can use SonarQube. Pretius uses SonarQube. You can use Regex's ApexSec. It's been there for a long time. It's a very respected tool. There used to be a tool called Apex Cert, and now the white paper does not cover it, but I thought I'd mention it because it's been absorbed into Apex Project I. If that interests you, you can use that if you're aware about that. If you've used it in the past, check out Project I. This is SonarQube. SonarQube says, well, look at this. Using logger log, you're doing a page ID here, but then you're choosing an argument here, not a positional, and it says, well, you shouldn't really use a mix of both. So you can say, yeah, ignore that. Or you can say, yes, I'm going to fix it, and you can fix all those problems. Okay, there's a largest section on this centric development. In this presentation, I'm not going to make it a large section. I'm going to summarize it. But you should be aware what team-centric is. You probably work like team-centric right now. So you have one Git branch, you work on tickets, and you commit and push and make changes to your Apex application. So each time you commit to the application, it's like a representation of the whole team's progress, So it's the whole team's progress towards all those features. So you can periodically export and import and commit and push to the main development branch. You can control these features with build options. Now in this feature centric, each ticket has got, or feature has got its own environment. That's not really that clear in the white paper. It could be per developer or it could be per feature. So these private instances now, so you periodically pull and export commit to these branches now, not to development branch. There's something about merging with YAML, which I'll explain later, and server code in Git. And then you merge them back into this main here. As you do each one, it triggers a release to your Apex development environment. Because remember, you're not working on development, you're working on your own private environment. So you need to get the development environment up to speed and then perform those tests. Right, it's explained best in this Life of Gina. This is Gina. She's a feature-centric developer. So she decides she's going to work on this feature here. She creates a private environment. So it could be a cloud clone, a PDB, something like that. So she clones the environment. She starts working on the feature. She runs export to Git when she thinks she's done, and then tries to merge it back into this blue main branch here. Now you can see she's got a pull request. Now the peer reviewers look at it and say, whoa, Gina, you've missed something out here. So she goes back and she implements it again. She exports, she does all the testing, she exports it all to Git. And then the code reviewers look at the next merge branch and say, yep, it's good. So they merge it back in. And then that kicks off a new build from the main branch and installs it on that development environment. That means the next developer can clone dev and start working on a new feature, which includes Gina's work. There's a flaw though in this. So this is an example from YAML where two developers have changed job. So one changed the label from job to occupation, one's changed it from job to work role. Which one wins? Well, Steve says occupation wins, so it's going to save that in the YAML, but it's done for no reason whatsoever. Remember, YAML is readable, it's not releasable, as confirmed by the Apex team. So Martin read the paper, and it says, well, will there be merging of export files or import of YAML? Which is a fair point because it does suggest that you can merge SQL files, and Patrick has cleared this up. Merging of SQL export files is not supported, but it's on the roadmap to import YAML in future releases. So until that comes, You can do feature-centric development as long as there is no situation where you can do merge conflicts. So you can use page lock-in and communication and all the tools at your disposal, try and avoid as best as possible that, and it should be able to work. So let's automate all this. So there's some tools which can help with automation. There's Jenkins, there's OCI DevOps, there's GitHub Actions, GitLab, Oracle Visual Builder Studio. So we're seeing two pipelines here in Jenkins. A pipeline contains stages, stages contain steps, pipelines are run by build executors on the environment. So we're seeing two here, an export to Git, which is a manual one, which we can run whenever we like. And we've got a deployment there called Great App, which deploys Great App to test. So all these scripts are on the final page to download. Export dev to Git exports exactly your to Git. So in our Jenkins files, it's going to check out from Git. It's going to install the latest version of SQL.cl. It's going to get our credentials for the dev database, and it's going to export application 597 into files. So export to Git does the database, and it does the Apex application as well. And then in the steps here, we're going to commit and push that to Git. That's it. So set up SQL.cl to export through Liquidbase and export the Apex application, and then put it back into Git. Easy. The next one is going to deploy it. So it's going to deploy it onto they've got an environment just for unit tests. And then if it works, we'll put it onto test. Okay. So we've got download SQL.cl and download UTL SQL. Now we're going to build a zip file, make a build file from Git. Remember, we've checked out from Git. We've checked out from Git. Now we're going to use Git to a build or a zip file. Now we're going to install that build on our unit DB. So we've got a unit test environment here. Then in util PL/SQL, which we're going to just installed, we're going to run those tests. And we want the format in JUnit reporters, like a Jenkins reporter. If that's all good, we're going to change our credentials to a test environment and run the same thing. Install the build. This time we'll pass in a different ID. So it installs the build on our test environment. So this is triggered by a check-in to main branch. So it creates the build, installs it on a unit test environment. If it works, we're going to install that build onto our test environment, and then testers can get underway in testing. So last bits now. So the white paper ends on this summary. It's a big text summary, but I've pulled it together in this table. So it's in two columns. We've got small. Now you could say that's a small team, or you could say that's a small app, or a large app, or a larger team. So our centric, it will be team, or for small teams, all work together. For larger teams, work considered separate environments, feature-based, track issues in something like the free team development, or larger, and anything which offers a Kanban board. So like the centric, an instance will be shared here, or in large team branch instances. And then for the next 5, use Git, use util PL/SQL for database tests. Use the bat files, script files provided. Use separate environments for larger teams. Definitely aspire to using that for a small team. Otherwise, you can use workspaces. And then go large. So Cypress for user interface testing. Inspect the code which gets outputted from Apex, and start automating things to make your life easier. So I'm in contact with Steve. Things I'm discussing with Steve is this merging is going to make it clear to avoid these conflicts. Feature-centric peer testing. So if I've got my private environment, I'm doing some work in here, and I say it's ready for test. Like, how do you test my work? You can review the test cases, but how do you get on my environment to test it? You can deploy it to your environment, but then you need to undo it from your environment to get back onto your work. So it's going to cover all that. An example. There's some improvements that I've identified in Cypress examples, script improvements. If we can get this multi-app and multi-schema support for the script files, because the white paper suggests you split into multi-apps. So why don't the scripts represent that? SQL's LB bugs have been improved. Something thought about data as well for the white paper as well. So Steve says he's going to update the white paper. Ways of proactively avoiding merge conflicts, clarification on ML merging. It's going to have another look at this multi-app, multi-schema, and look at filtering out dev options, that filter flag. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to contact me at mmulvaney@pretius.com or follow me at Twitter, Matt_Mulvaney. Thank you very much for your time.